Welcome to the Debrief. I'm here with the Hill's editor-in-chief, Bob Cusack. Thanks for joining us, Bob.
Hey, Robby.
Well, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell and House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy, they have drifted apart the last 2 years, prompting concerns about whether they'll be able to work together if Republicans take back power. And the Hill had some really good reporting on this. Yep. Can you shed more light on it for us?
It's fascinating. I've never seen such an odd relationship between the two top Republicans on Capitol Hill in my 25 years in Washington. And usually they get along and they unite. But of course, what's at the center of their disagreement? Well, it's former President Trump, Mitch McConnell. And Trump will never get along again. And McCarthy really needs Trump at this time, especially if he wants to, and he does, to become Speaker. So while McConnell he voted for the bipartisan infrastructure bill, also a CHIPS bill, and a recent funding bill, McCarthy rallied his caucus against all three. So now if McCarthy, as expected, becomes Speaker, they're going to have to, I think, get along better. Now, of course, they push back on the aides, and they say they get along. And it's not like there's tension, like Trump tension.
Right.
But it's not quite the same relationship that Mitch McConnell had with former Speaker Paul Ryan and former Speaker John Boehner.
I think I would say, from hearing from activists, conservative pundits, et cetera, they certainly think that Kevin McCarthy has done a better job in kind of keeping the various strands of conservatism together. Yep. That, you know, he is still broadly liked, or maybe tolerated at least, by the Marjorie Taylor Greene faction, as well as the more mainstream Republican faction. Is that there's not a lot of people really coming for Kevin McCarthy.
Right.
It's not true of McConnell because of the relationship he's had with Trump.
That's right. Trump has not endorsed McCarthy yet for Speaker, but no one's really running against him. McCarthy wisely now has Jim Jordan on his side, who used to be kind of an enemy. So I think that McCarthy is going to get the votes. I think some of the drama around it is kind of overblown, but I think McCarthy's going to. But you're right. Mitch McConnell also told CNN this week that, hey, he's got the votes to become the top Republican leader in the next Congress. But usually, Robby, that's unanimous. I don't think this time it's going to be unanimous. I don't think it's going to be unanimous.
No. It still might be the case, but I don't think it'll be unanimous. Now, it'll be interesting if the dynamic shifts, we're all kind of expecting the Republicans to retake the House.
Yes.
Senate very much in doubt. Will Kevin McCarthy have to govern in a different way when he is actually managing a majority coalition? He'll no longer have the luxury of just kind of routinely rallying the troops to oppose whatever. It's easy to oppose stuff.
It's
when
easy
you're
to
actually
oppose
when you're in the majority, you end up doing stuff.
Yeah, when you're in the minority, you can go home kind of early. But when you're in the majority, you've got to drive the bus. So I do think McCarthy will have to shift. But it also depends on his margin. How not only do they win the House, but by how much.
Yeah. All right, well, we're less than a month from midterms, and the House Democrats' campaign arm actually announced a $56.5 million fundraising haul in the third quarter, which is $14 million more than the GOP. Should Republicans be worried about that?
I think they should be a little worried about this. I think this was surprising to me. I mean, usually the party in power gets more money, okay? But we were just talking about it, how it's likely the Republicans are going to win the majority. So therefore, I would have thought this would have been closer. However, where do I think most of the money from donors is going? It's not in the House. It's going to the Senate. And I think House Republicans are struggling from this. But you got to give the Democratic campaign arm, which has had some troubles over the last couple of years, really did a good job in fundraising. And this is important. Will it be enough for them to keep the majority? Probably not.
Is it reflective of the changing demographics of who is the Republican Party and who is the Democratic Party, that, in the long term, I can imagine Democrats eventually getting a fundraising advantage from the fact that increasingly elite, wealthier people are part of their the Republican Party is becoming more a working class party, a small donor kind of situation.
That's an interesting point, and I do think some of that is because of the abortion ruling that has fired up the left. It certainly fires up the right too, but it kind of woke them up. But I think that's an interesting point. But on the other hand, remember, cash is not everything. It's not king in politics. Not necessarily. Hillary Clinton significantly outraised
100%.
Donald Trump. So cash is important, but it's not as important as it used to be.
Not as important. But you can certainly see how it would make a difference in these, couple key races we have that are so close.
Yeah.
Oz and Fetterman, Blake Masters in Arizona, Walker and Warnock, the Nevada one. These very close races that are going to decide really the fate of governance in this country for the next
and that's
several
what
years.
That's what the nation and political insiders and outsiders too are focusing on, the battle for the Senate. So if you're the House Republican campaign arm, you're like, no, don't assume we're going to win. We need money. It's got to be more challenging than the Senate Republicans saying, hey, we need the money because we need to win the Senate.
Is it also an issue for Republicans because Trump does a tremendous amount of fundraising for just himself and his private war chest? That the Republican, if you're giving to a Republican cause, that is diverted, that some of it is going to Trump for various Trump causes that he doesn't use that money to back his candidates. He endorses his candidates.
Right.
He goes to their rallies, but he doesn't spend his money on his candidates.
Well, yeah, he has just started to, but a lot of critics are saying, wow, you've got a lot more money to spend. So we need more than, whatever, I think it's around $5 million he's given, but he could give a lot more, and I think that's
chump change. Come on,
he raises $5 million sometimes in a week.
Yeah.
So that's really nothing. So I think that's one to watch. And remember, a lot of these House races are going to go into overtime. They're going to need some money for legal reasons because on election night, many of these House races in particular, and maybe Senate, won't be called.
Fascinating. But we want to know who's won the night of.
I know.
Not
It's
stretched it
frustrating.
out for weeks. It's very frustrating for us pundits and also probably many voters.
Oh, yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Bob.
Thanks,
and
Robby.
we'll see you next week for the debrief. Take care.